right, welcome back, everyone. It's great chatting with everyone over lunch, or many of you. So our next speaker this afternoon is Brian Canares. He is the director of Gearup at Rutgers. I sense another acronym. A discretionary grant program funded by the U.S. Department of Education. Oh, brother, okay. We still have our grants. That seeks to increase the number of low-income students who are prepared to enter and succeed in a post-secondary education. Brian holds a BA in History and a Master of Education in Social Studies Education from Rutgers, New Brunswick. Before assuming his current role, he served 2 years as the administrative coordinator under Senior Vice Provost for Undergraduate Education. In this capacity, he has been and remains an integral element of the Microcredentialing initiative at Rutgers, serving as the chair of the campus-wide Digital Badging Committee. To advance the initiative, he focuses on integrating digital badges into existing programmatic elements by helping individual units reassess their goals and assessments. Before coming back to Rutgers, Brian taught 5th to 7th grade social studies for a decade at Forest Street Community School in Orange, New Jersey. This experience has shaped his approach to microcredentials, where he relies on adaptability and intuition to navigate an evolving landscape that, like adolescence, calls for thoughtful guidance and growth. Very good. Yes.
Well, thank you for that wonderful introduction. I was going to give an introduction myself, but I think I'm going to go straight forward with the presentation. Ben and his team has put me in the impossible task of following the greatest speaker at most conferences, which is lunch. So if you can humor me, I have a part of my presentation is to be interactive. So if you can scan the code, if you are on your computer, I think you can also see my presentation as I go through it as well. So it's a cool little thing that I'm introducing in terms of Menti. We've been using it at the university here and there, and it's been very helpful. So the first set of questions that I'm going to have for you is generally about curiosity, because Rutgers locks me in a closet and I'm not able to get out as much to other conferences or whatnot. So I really want to find out what other people are doing at other universities, right? It's such a new landscape. And so if you could, I've created some emojis here already. If you could give me one word that describes how microcredentials are going in your, at your institution, I would love that. And I think we'll be able to see a sort of an aggregation of like what we're seeing and sort of what we're kind of thinking through in most of our initiatives. I love that. I love that I see a glass half full perspective when it comes to microcredentials, because oftentimes, and I'm going to get through this, we often see a lot of pushback. I think it's human nature when something new and innovative comes about. It's natural to be incredibly skeptical. So I love that I see that it's taking off. There's this excitement about it. But there's also this question of like the unknown, right? This next one, it's a little bit of a graph, so we can see where we stand. And this is where microcredentials at your institution stand today, right? So some of you might have a good level of implementation. As Anne had mentioned, she was a team of 1 when she first started. I'm a team of half because my position as director of Gearup actually has nothing to do with microcredentials, and it's more of just a layover of my role as administrative coordinator under the senior vice provost. So our initiative, we don't have a lot of implementation, and I would think that a lot of us, or at least myself, is in the third quadrant where we don't have a lot of implementation, and we are also struggling with buy-in and engagement to a certain degree. And then you can see that the 1 represents where all of us stand as an average. I will say, though, whoever this person is, I really want to talk to you at the end of the forum. And then the last part, before we really get started, is if your microcredentials were a browser extension your institution just installed, what function does it serve? I think the reasoning for this question, and Anne had mentioned, she used the metaphor of parenting guide as well as choices at a food, and it's kind of unknown as to what universities are doing at each of your institutions, right? We're all using it for different reasons. The metaphor that I've been using is I love watching TV shows and film, and I really love the show Deadwood. And Deadwood takes us through a town where they're out in the wild, wild west, and it's part of an American territory, and they're in the middle of getting statehood. What microcredentials are, in my mind at least, we are kind of in this wild, wild west, right? There's not a lot of rules and regulations that are tied to it. Eventually, when there maybe is probably money tied to it, we're going to have a situation where, in the case of Deadwood, the federal government comes in and starts establishing rules, right? Just like our institutions. Eventually, rules will be set in place, but as we talked about with microcredentials, it's important that we make sure that we pivot, right? We're prepared to pivot for what comes next. And so this is how I want to approach it in a way. Let's see what some of our answers are here. Alignment with NACE competencies, transparency, recognition of skills, accreditation. I think I can go down from here too. Relevance in 21st century. Google search, great. Okay, thank you for that. Thank you for the engagement, and thank you for taking yourself out of lunch to a certain degree, right? So a quick overview. So I'm going to give you an overview of what we're doing at Rutgers, New Brunswick. The platform that we use is Credible. So we actually used Credly beforehand, but that kind of predates me. When I stepped into the role, we had just established a formal committee and process at Rutgers University, New Brunswick, and they had just chosen the platform to change from Credly to Credible. If you ask me why we did that, I actually don't know the answer to that, but we are now on the Credible platform. And to date, we have about 80 badges, and there's some nuance and context to this, but we've awarded over 30,000 badges to 27,000 total unique credential views on the Credible platform. So we're moving forward in that regard, and I'm really excited about how we're moving forward. But as I said, and I'm going to get to it later, there's some context that's attached to that, right? There's some nuances that are attached to it that come with a lot of the philosophical questions that we're coming through or we're challenged with answering during our committee meetings. Oops. So I don't know how I approach this slide. So Rutgers University is an incredibly complex system. We have multiple campuses that are across New Jersey, right? So we have, at our top level, we have the university that's run by our president, right? Then we have our 4 campuses, which is Rutgers University New Brunswick, Rutgers University Newark, Camden, RBHS, and then we have our continuing studies section as well as our libraries. Rutgers also historically is a decentralized institution, and so in that decentralization, we often come up with our own processes, right? So every single one of these campuses or units that you see up here all have their own campuses. And as you can imagine, all have their own processes. And as you can imagine, it's created some complications for us. But specifically, what we've done at Rutgers New Brunswick is we've kind of just done what's in our control. We do what's in our control because the answers or the questions that they pose for us are sometimes a lot more complicated than we would like, right? So this is a little bit about our process at Rutgers New Brunswick. As we had mentioned, so The person who's in charge of the Microcredential initiative is Carolyn Mailing. She is the Senior Vice Provost of Undergraduate Education at the university. I chair the committee, but like I said, the initiative that we've had here has been mainly based off of who can run it and sort of who has the capacity to do so. And I came in during a time as our administrative coordinator where I was dealing with a lot of the credentials, like the logistics of setting up the committee and such. And I kind of just naturally, one, I saw the value of it, and two, sort of just put myself in a position where, it was just natural for me to take over the initiative over at the university. I also have incredible loyalty towards her, so she's tricked me in that regard. And so, even in this new role, which I'm still under her in this case, I've found opportunity to at least dedicate some time to continuing this initiative. The way that we pass a lot of our badges through is each school. So you have the School of Arts and Sciences, SEBS, School of Engineering. All of them have their own processes. So we have at the very top, we have them have their own. Each campus has their own process. Each CLU, which is Chancellor-led unit, New Brunswick, has its own process. And then the schools have their own process. And we don't legislate that at all. The only thing that they need from us is, or the only thing that we need from them is an endorsement from their executive dean or the one in charge of that school, right? So as long as they have a letter and they're aware, they're able to pass it through. Then every month, we meet as a committee. From there, we approve every badge the badges that come through, we review it, we might have some recommendations, and then finally we put the badge on a credible. So that's our process. Now, just a little bit about how we make decisions. I actually created this rubric, and it seems like it's very similar to what other rubrics look like. I based this off of my own teaching career in terms of how we should be evaluating badges, but also guiding conversations, right? If we don't put ourselves in a position where we're guiding conversations, where we're trying to almost upscale these competencies and skills within every one of these badges, then it just becomes this little token that people will earn, right? So we want to make sure that when we're reviewing these badges, there's a certain level of mastery, quote unquote, that we're looking for in each of these badges, right? So the first is coming to participation in foundational skills, right? So like, this might be attending a workshop or whatnot. This might be taking one skill and maybe doing some kind of module or assessment. And then the conversations that I'm trying to push a lot of programs towards are more of the intermediate and advanced badges. And in those badges, you're taking multiple skills and competencies, right? And multiple badges, multiple forms of assessment, and then we're creating a system in which we have a robust program that we're looking at, right? And so from there, that pushes us to start not only taking our programs, but then taking our programs and seeing what more we can do with that. Now, as I had mentioned, there are a lot of philosophical questions that come about. I had mentioned the complications with how different CLUs have their own processes. There's also complications that come with having the accreditable platform because, I mean, as a lot of you might know, a lot of programs and platforms are not designed for higher ed. They're designed for corporations. Like our Oracle platform has like language that uses corporation language, right? Companies' language. And so there's a lot of philosophical questions that come about with our committee meetings as you start to think about scaling it to a much higher degree. And so my question to you is, as you're approving, what are some big, messy dilemmas you face when approving badges at your institution? I've already preset some because there's some that I want to talk about. The first question is, how do you differentiate between a degree, certificate, or digital badge? We recently had a proposal that wanted to make their leadership minor program into one specific badge. So we had to sit there and question and talk about, well, if they're getting it as a degree, right? How do we justify make it into a badge, Because a lot of the time what happens is we don't want to step on what's already been established, right? So they came back to us, and what they said was they wanted to make it more of a revenue generating type of venture where they only offered pieces of this leadership program that would add up to the minor program in general. And we also made the decision that, when it comes to things that you would see on a transcript, we probably would stay away from as digital badges. Now, this is something that you might look at it and say, well, no, that's not the right way to do it. And I think that's part of the figuring out that we're doing at the moment, right? We're trying to figure out what works best for us, but also, we're also trying to sift through it as we go along. And so it's always good to hear from other institutions about what you're doing, right? The second thing is, we only have a limited amount of, so if you have a digital badging program, we only have a limited amount of templates. What I didn't mention is we have a number of, so the nuance to that 30,000 issued badges is that we have a learning centers that gives a badge to every student that completes their program. And they award like thousands of those badges within a given period of time. So the question is as we start to move forward with our digital badges and we start to see more of it, how do we know what is a really robust and really credible type of badge versus what is something that someone completed one module on Canvas and then went from there, right? So those are questions we wrestle with. Do we want to create participation badges where you're just doing a workshop and then moving forward? Or do we want to create more rigor to it? But also at the same time, we also have to get buy-in, right? So those are the questions we wrestle with. And then finally, as I had mentioned with the accreditable system, in the accreditable system, we are separated by departments. And so if a badge is created through Rutgers, New Brunswick, I have no way of seeing badges or editing badges that are in Rutgers, Newark or Rutgers, Camden, right? So in the event that someone wants to create a badge from New Brunswick, but then offer it to other campuses, where does it originate from? Does it originate from the university level, or does it originate from the New Brunswick level? And we've decided that whoever's offering it, where it comes from, is the person or the school that originates it, right? Let's see what some of the other ones we say here. Oh, sorry, I'm using the wrong mouse. Knowledge and knowledge badges, relevance and value, student understanding instructions of submitting valuable evidence. Excellent. And these are all questions we face as well. Okay, so now I want to get into the part about bridging, I forgot the name of my presentation, bridging programs to badges. And so I think it was Pablo who brought up this point of taking existing programs and creating badges out of it, because that's been my approach when I have conversations about it. And so, like I said, we have had different types of badges that were from the learning centers. We have badges that are for our mini MBA program out of our business school, right? So those are the badges that we see, and those are awarded a lot. But I think when we talk about digital badging and microcredentials, I want to talk about it in terms of a narrative. So I want to talk about things that I'm seeing and the direction that, since I'm a team of one, we can push those narratives forward in a certain way, right? And so the first thing that we do in terms of how we think about badging is through professional development. The Office of the Vice Provost for Research has been really, when we talk about buy-in, they have really bought into digital badging. And they've also formed a lot of their programs around digital badging. One of them is they are giving out grants for this program called Cryo-M, which is part of this RAD collaboratory. And in that, they have students that take really expensive technology and they teach them skills on it. And so they've created digital badges on that. And I think that's one of the main ways that I think digital badging is really valuable. Another way is that faculty, when they become faculty, often don't know how to write grants. So if they've created a program for NIH R01 grant funding and taken them for, I think it's like a 9-month process, where they take them every step of the way in terms of creating grants and writing up grants and making sure they submit it on time. So there are faculty that are using this program and then also using digital badging as a result of getting this program. The second part I want to talk about in terms of professional development is staff. I particularly want to talk about the one-stop certification. So the one-stop student service is, I'm a student of history, so I kind of think of them on the front lines, especially with Rutgers being as complex as it is. Oftentimes, we have students that don't know things about financial aid, registrar, and they're having issues. And oftentimes, people don't know where to send them, and if they do send them, they don't ever answer back, right? So they're just put into this black hole. The One-Stop Service Center is a place where it's a one-stop shop for questions. And you may have replicated at your own universities or whatnot. But essentially, any student who has a question about financial aid, student accounting, registrar, they all go to this one-stop place and they get answers, right? And so the staff has created a program that's not just offered to their staff themselves, but also offered to other staff around the university. And I think this is where I've seen the most traction in terms of people being really proud of, people really liking the fact that they have programming that's set for them in terms of upscaling their skills. Another badge I want to mention that's not on here is we have something called the Scarlet Well Initiative. And this is an initiative by the Chancellor to focus in on mental health for staff, and then creating a peer support leader program. And then in June, they're going to have this big event where they celebrate those who have earned the peer leader support badge, and they're going to award the badge on that day. So in a way, it's this badging system in some cases has become this ritualistic thing that I think is what I'm seeing down the future of how we create buy-in for microcredentials, right? And I also talked about how these programs, when they earn it, there's a nice thing where there's a level of pride in it. And so this is something, so I see this one-stop certification badge all over LinkedIn every time someone earns it. And so this is one of my colleagues that I'm friends with on LinkedIn, and he works for the One-Stop. And all he did was he said, "I'm proud of this." And I think that's how we kind of should look at how we're going to, leverage microcredentials in order to really gain a level of buy-in for staff. So the next one that I want to talk about, it's going to be a video, and that's experiential learning, right? So we want to make sure that experiential learning activities are more present, especially when it comes to digital badging. I'm going to show this quick video. We won't watch all of it.
Welcome to NASDAQ Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at NASDAQ. Joining us at the MarketSite studio in Times Square, New York City, we have Claudia Santa Cruz. She's the co-founder and head of R&D at Sage Tech. We also have Oliver Keisha, co-founder and finance lead at Sage Tech, and Brianna Lishi. She's a co-founder and head of public relations. Also at Sage Tech, they are a group of Rutgers University's entrepreneurs developing an education technology startup centered around VR in education. And join me to discuss integrating design and entrepreneurial thinking into the student experience by leveraging technology more effectively for experiential learning. It is great to have you guys with us, fellow Scholar Knights at MarketSite with us. Oliver, I want to start with you. What was the genesis behind Sage Tech? What's its goals and mission, and what are the problems that you're looking to solve?
So the main problem that we're looking to solve is bringing accessible experiential learning into the education system. We found that traditional learning methods have not changed much in the past 200 years. You had students sitting at rows of desks 200 years ago, and teachers were lecturing on the board, and the model has pretty much stayed the same up until today, where the technology has changed. Students are taking notes on laptops, or the teachers are writing on a board, and it's an electronic board instead. But experiential learning has been shown to be the most effective form of learning, and we haven't utilized that enough.
Right.
Just an overview of what this program was. So this is a program called Sage Tech. Sage Tech was developed by students, and what they saw in K-12 education was the lack of experiential learning. Experiential learning. And so what their business idea was to start was a VR, a virtual reality type of experiential learning program within K-12 education that they developed at Rutgers. They're still students. I think they were sophomores or juniors here, and I think they're seniors now, right now in Rutgers Business School. And so I wanted to say, so Sage Tech, this organization, or this business essentially, started at this place called IDEA, and that's called the Innovation Design and Entrepreneurship Academy. And in IDEA, which is run by Veronica Armour, and she's doing a great job, essentially in their first year, what they do is they come to this place called the Hatchery, and they incubate ideas. And in this place, this is where they learn design. They see societal problems, and they figure out solutions, or they come up with the best way on how to approach those problems, right? And then in their second year, they actually put it into practice. So the skills they learn in the research, all their skills they apply towards figuring out a solution to that problem. And then finally, as an advanced innovator, which is in their third or fourth year, what they do is they actually implement it. And Sage Tech is an example of a group that took it from beginning to end and are now implementing it. As you can see, they were featured on it as an interview on NASDAQ, right? So these are the type of programs that we want creating digital badges, because it's an existing program that is on campus that is really great, and it's a way of getting visibility. But more importantly than that, what they're doing in a place like IDEA is they're attaching other courses as well as experiences to their badges. So for example, the Burn Seminar and Coastal Systems and Climate Change, those are courses that have to be taken in order to get this first Emerging Innovator badge. Then as they become practicing innovators, they're tasked with then joining competitions around New Jersey, right? The Holt Prize competition, the U-Pitch New Jersey competition. I believe Sage Tech won the U-Pitch New Jersey competition. And so they are attaching all of these different types of experiences to their badges. But I also should mention that IDEA, as much as people at our university talk about experiential learning, there are the ones who are the most skeptical are those who have formal credits attached to it. So every time that Veronica has tried to create formal credit for her program, it's always denied, or they give her a lot of pushback. So she's hoping that her badging program is going to create some credibility where she attaches these experiences as well as these other courses to bring some credibility in introducing experiential learning activities as well as IDEA into for credit type of endeavors. So these are the type of things that I feel like we should be focusing in on when it comes to digital badging. Experiential learning is the wave of the future, and so we need to push ourselves in a way where those opportunities are integrated within our own curriculum, right? And the third thing that I want to talk about is preserving our roots. So, I'm a Jersey boy, and I'm from, I went to Rutgers, so I bleed scarlet red as well. And I really love the fact that there's a lot of history that's connected to our university. And one of them is Douglas College. So we used to be separated by a number of colleges. We had Rutgers College, Douglas College, Livingston College, before we integrated into the School of Arts and Sciences, the School of Environmental and Biological Sciences, Engineering. Before we integrated all of those together into one, we were different colleges. And the precursor to this was Douglas College was a school for women in 1918, right? And so there's a lot of rich history that's there. And so, along with innovation, as well as the political context of things, right? Often tradition and such start to get erased or it goes by the wayside. And so so Douglas now exists as a Douglas residential college, but they still have the curriculum in place. And so what they're doing is using microcredentials to keep that curriculum alive. And so those who go through Douglas, it's not a mandatory curriculum, you don't do it for credit or whatnot, but there are courses attached to their curriculum in which they're able to then use this badging system as a way of showing and awarding that they've actually completed the Douglas College curriculum, right? And they could be Douglas students and take pride in being Douglas students. So one of the things that it's not totally prevalent in our university, but I would like for digital badging to not only be bridging these programs into badges, but also to be using it as a way of keeping our identity as Rutgers University New Brunswick, right? And so, as we say, there's not one size fits all in all these things, but we want to kind of shape it into your own values. You want to kind of shape your badging system into what you think is best for your system. And I heard there's a really great quote today We cannot predict the future, but we can prepare for an unpredictable future by Anne Reid. So, this is the quote that I leave you with because we really have to plan for it. I did a badging presentation at our local student success conference, and 3 people showed up. So, there's always these things where, like, things that happened in the 70s and 80s, there were small rooms, there was like a lot of rebellion that comes with the small groups of people that are starting this thing. And there's a purity to that, right? There's a purity to when small groups start this big idea, and then it grows from there. And so we want to make sure we're pivoted, right? And we want to make sure that we're ready and prepared for a future that it may not be called microcredentials, but aspects of it will remain so. And so if you want to visit our website, this is our website over here, as well as our email. I think I did really great on time. So if there's any questions, I have questions up here too if you want, but I think questions. Yeah.
Your last example with the Douglas College, are you doing anything with like honors colleges where you kind of add that little bit of distinction?
It's great that you asked that. Oh, sorry, you wanted to ask that question again? Yeah, so the question was, are we doing anything with badging in regards to honors colleges and such? So our division actually has just been integrated or has just taken on our Rutgers honors system, honors program. So before, our honors program was separated into our different schools, and then there was an honors college that was also residential in nature, so it was all over the place. Our Vice Provost, Chuck Keaton, for experiential learning, was tasked with integrating that all together into one Rutgers honors. And I've already presented the fact to him that the pathway for microcredentials can be used for Rutgers honors so to track a lot of their progress moving forward. Mm-hmm. Sure.
Thank you for the quote.
You're welcome.
I have a couple questions, actually. I've used Rutgers as an example in presentations when I'm talking about different models, because I know you have that mini MBA program where learners can sort of come in as
non-traditional students.
Non-traditional, but as not take these non-credit badges and then later have them sort of transfer into credit. Is that am I representing that correctly?
Yeah, you are representing that correctly, but I, to be honest with you, I couldn't give you a nuanced answer about that.
But you're doing that, so I'm not wrong to say that Rutgers is a model for this sort of non-credit to credit pathway, which is really exciting.
Yeah, but I will say, so like they have their own formal process for approving that, so which is why I think they accept those credits.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then my second question is, I noticed that you have these professional development badges for faculty and staff, and you also have badges for students. Is it the same committee that you mentioned that sort of looks over those and approves those?
Yes, we do. We haven't had any real student life badges that have come through, so I foresee that being a challenge that we're probably going to have to talk through somewhere down the line. But as of right now, if, for example, a student organization wanted to create a badge, they would have to submit their application, but ensure that there's a staff member that's attached to that to make sure that in the event that they leave or when they leave, that there's somebody that is going to continue that.
Yeah, we have a couple of examples of programs like that, so if you want to talk about it. But I ask because at UB, we're not allowed to approve microcredentials for faculty and for faculty, professional development type of microcredentials, because the argument is sort of like, that's not under our purview because we're under academic affairs and we're not really qualified to approve learning for faculty. So that's interesting. I could bring you, you know, as a model of someone who is doing that.
Yeah, and we approve all of them in that case. We're not under, so I guess even though the initiative is under undergraduate education, it's really a chancellor initiative. So I feel like they communicate with each other in order to ensure that there's some level of like quality that comes with review.
And what I notice is the committee is sort of higher level deans and so forth.
Yep.
Whereas in your case, in Buffalo's case, it's going through the regular curriculum process, as I understand it. Right.
The Associate Deans for Academic Affairs, they're the final approving body.
Yeah. And I would say ours is not as stringent as that, right? So, you know, there's probably some complications that come down the line when it comes to that. So, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? Okay, great.
Thank you all for your time.
Quite a variety. Yeah, great variety of models for us to consider, so thank you so much.